Welcome to Storytime, brought to you by the OWSCyCon2019, the online book event of the year. Ugly, that was the first word that came to mind. Deadly was the next. As we faced off the nightmare, Sid stood to its right and I took the left, both of us crouched in anticipation of an attack. What this formidable creature was, I had no idea. It stood roughly 15 feet tall, walked on two legs and had two arms, but its head was a grotesque concoction of goat and demon, for lack of a better description. Treacherous horns protruded from either side of its elongated head, torso, and upper thighs, making it difficult to get close to the beast. Not that we especially wanted to, but it was part of a bender's job requirement to eradicate nightmares. This twisted creation was courtesy of a new client, a scientist, and had paid him nightly visits for the past couple of weeks. "I'll go high, you go low," I called to Sid. Besides the hideous appearance, the goat thing screeched like a deranged bird, and we strained to hear each other even with the comm units. She unsheathed a 10-inch dagger from her utility belt, the silver blade glinting in the eerie cast of yellow-green light in this nightmare-scape. Being somewhat vertically challenged, she hated it when I said short. Sid might not look intimidating, but give the girl a knife and she was absolutely lethal. The creature's leg tendons would be sliced to ribbons in seconds. Sid dived to the creature's right, spinning and coming up behind it as she avoided an angry kick to her head. As a distraction, I withdrew an iron mallet from my own belt and catapulted myself off the wall, soaring over the goat demon and landing a blow to the left side of its head. Shrieking in pain as Sid carved into its left leg, its head jerked in my direction when I came down on its other side. The sharpened tip of the horn caught the left side of my rib cage, and I felt the warm flow of blood beneath my shirt. Wouldn't be the first time I'd walked away from a nightmare with a permanent scar. Scrambling around his legs, careful not to be trampled, Sid's dagger was a silver blur as she slashed the grey-haired appendages. The goat demon staggered in its efforts to avoid her blade. The ground was wet with liquid. I was unsure at this point if it was blood. With dream or nightmare creatures, you couldn't be sure, although considering its creator was a scientist, they tended to be more detail-oriented. Odds leaned in the blood direction. The light around us was taking on a red hue, and I wonder if it correlated to the creature's anger level. Yellow, green, annoyed. Red, take no prisoners. I sailed through the air again, keeping my distance from the sharp tips of the horn, and managed a solid strike to the top of its head between the horns. It was floundering, the screeches growing weaker, and movements sluggish as liquid spilled down the beast's face. Standing to the side, I kept the mallet raised in case Sid needed help. She'd sliced and diced so much that skin, muscle and tendons hung in shreds around the creature's legs. It wouldn't last much longer. "Pull back!" She nodded that she'd heard me, then dove and rolled behind the goat demon to get out of its path. At the same time it lurched forward and slipped in the liquid gushing from its wounds, tilting precariously backwards, towards Sid, with its razor-sharp horns on a direct collision course with her body. There was no way the goat demon would miss her. "Eject, Sid! Now! Now! Now!" For benders, a mortal wound in the dream or nightmare equaled death to our bodies lying in the lab. Without question or hesitation, her hand immediately shot to the cuff strapped around her left wrist and pushed a red button, expelling her from the nightmare. The creature landed hard where Sid had been only seconds earlier. I exhaled in relief, but still had to deal with one seriously perturbed goat demon, on my own, with no backup. The beast struggled to rise, unsteady on what was left of its legs, determined not to be banished so quickly. I needed to move fast. It seemed to have gained a second wind, and now there was only one target. My hand reached for the dagger strapped to my belt, and I groaned in annoyance at the empty sheath. It must have fallen out when I'd landed. I'd stressed to trainees that a backup plan may save their life, and they should always keep other options in mind, especially when they find themselves in situations such as this. Tightening my hand around the iron mallet, I propelled myself into the air once again. The beast had managed to stand, but instead of flying over him this time I hovered just above his head. His arms sliced through the air trying to reach me, but I was pretty agile when I came to the flying thing. I managed to roll and twist around his blows. I drew back the mallet and swung with everything I had, connecting with the goat demon's right horn. It shrieked in rage, but the impact with my mallet had nearly ripped the horn from its head, and I readied myself for another strike. I pummeled it once more, wrenched it from the creature's head and manoeuvred around to the other horn, when the goat demon tried to shish kebab me. I increased my speed, flying faster around its head in a random pattern, keeping my movements unpredictable. The comm unit crackled in my ear as Charlie, who was still in the lab, checked my status. "Evan, are you all right? You're bleeding from your upper torso." "Affirmative." No time to talk if my plan was going to work. With the detached horn still clutched in my hand, I faked a turn to the left, then rolled to the creature's right side, now with only a non-threatening stump protruding from its head. Drawing back my arm, I stabbed its eye with the finely honed appendage, shoving it in until it would go no further, then dropped to the ground behind it. Its wails pierced my ears and echoed off the walls, but I never let my guard down. Sometimes nightmares were surprisingly resilient and recovered quickly. That didn't seem to be the case with the goat demon, as its grey hairy body crumpled and folded in on itself, becoming smaller and smaller until it gradually disintegrated, extinguished with a final whimper. Shoving the iron mallet back into my belt, I bent over and rested my hands on my knees, gulping in deep breaths. I felt like collapsing myself, but needed to begin my exit sequence. God, I loved my job. When I came back to my body, a medbot was tending to the wound on my torso. It was a minor injury compared to others I'd received. Some of the more memorable ones were the talon marks on my back from some sort of gargoyle-human blend, a dislocated shoulder after being slammed into a wall by a hulking blob-type thing, and broken ankle from being stepped on by a giant one-eyed teddy bear. A couple of stitches on the torso hardly rated a second look. I tried shoving the persistent medibot away, then ripped the vital sign lead wires off my body. "Where's Sid?" I was relatively sure she'd ejected before the goat demon touched her, but that didn't stop me from swallowing anxiously. I needed confirmation. "She's fine," Charlie confirmed, gently pushing my shoulder so I'd lie in the Bender chair. "No injuries. She's in the download room right now. That must have been a pretty good one." Giving in and resting my head against the chair, I closed my eyes and let the medbot do its job. You have no idea. Sid and I were mindbenders at Scientific Innovations. With permission from our clients, we entered their minds for various reasons. Sometimes our mission was to locate important memories buried deeply in their subconscious, or assist in pulling their swirling thoughts or ideas into a cohesive concept that could help take our dying planet. Occasionally it was to obstruct recurring nightmares that interfered with the client's health or well-being. Continuously disrupted sleep caused increased stress, irritability, lack of focus, and depending on the client's job could potentially affect millions of lives. I rubbed the bandage covering the stitches beneath my shirt, annoyed that it caught on the fabric of my shirt. Crossing the stark white hall, I entered the lab where Sid was downloading any residual fear, hers or the client's, left over from this nightmare or any other recent cases. We didn't need to download after every nightmare case, but were strongly encouraged to when the anxiety levels reached a certain point. Absorbing a client's fear and trauma came with our job, but carrying it around wasn't healthy, and benders could potentially project that fear onto the client while in their mind. Not a good thing. This story time was read by Timothy Bateson, and brought to you in conjunction with the OWSCyCon 2019. OWSCyCon runs from May 17th through May 19th. You can find us at OWSCyCon.ourrightside.com. Again, OWSCyCon.ourrightside.com. We have events happening across all genres. If you are a reader, you cannot afford to miss this event. You never know. You may just find your next best read.